Chaksusmetam Tasmeshu. Thank you for inviting me here. When Prabhupada went to meet Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, he was part of the Gandhi movement. He was part of the Gandhi movement, Vinod Bhave, so much so that he even stopped his education, because that was one of the things Gandhi was saying. And so he stopped his education. And then Krishna tricked him by having one of his friends take him to Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. He said, I've seen so many sadhus come to my father's house. I'm not really interested. But then, upon meeting, the thunderbolt happened. He fell in love. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati noted that this young boy is coming and listening and not leaving. And that was a very nice qualification, because some people were more restless and not listening. And he noted that this boy is very intelligent. And so it took some time, but eventually he took initiation, and Bhaktivedanta Saraswati said, please take this holy name, this Vedic culture, to the West. In the British Museum, I found in an old Harmonist magazine that Prabhupada's poem was there. And it's adore the holy day. I don't know if you've seen the poem. It's a wonderful poem. And Prabhupada said he thought it was lost. I like cats. And Prabhupada used to pet. Well, I was living with a dog that was given to me in Mexico, and Prabhupada used to pet the cat and the dog in front of the temple with his foot. And we said, well, why can't cats and dogs come into the temple? Because of, like, St. Francis. And we were learning. And he said, well, cats and dogs can't ask, who am I? And then we said, why can't we just have big red beads. We didn't have tulsi beads. Why can't the beads touch the ground? Krishna made the ground too. Well, this is a sacred thing, and we protect sacred things. He was spoon-feeding us. So he took this idea to heart, and this poem, there's a verse in it, I found it, and he said, I thought this poem was lost. It was in 1930-something, he made this poem. And I was overjoyed when I saw this poem. And in it, there's a verse, adore ye all the holy day, something sweeter than May. And Prabhupada's purport was that because he didn't get to the West yet, but the vision was to get to the West. And in India, May is not so pleasant, but in the United States or the West, it is pleasant. So in a visionary way, Prabhupada even wrote this poem, not knowing anyone. He was very happy in Vrindavan. I lived in his rooms. They're very nice. One room overlooked Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. And the other room had even a punkah, a fan in it that the mayor of Delhi gave him. It was very comfortable. on the porch you can see Radha Damodar. It was very nice there. And yet, he left the holy Dham of Vrindavan, not knowing anyone at the age of 70. And the Sumati Moraji from Scindia Lines didn't even want to give him free passage, because she said, "You're an old man," and she was afraid. And then even the lady that he went to, the Arkawals in Butler, Pennsylvania, was afraid for the Swami. And she saw him go to New York, and she said, "New York's going to eat the Swami alive, because it's a rough place." And they even stole a typewriter, it's true. But she was sitting in a beautiful temple in New Vrindavan, West Virginia, and she was saying, "I was afraid for the Swami, but I guess he did all right." And so now Prabhupada was new to America. He only had this name, and they sponsored him. And he was trying to learn about America. And he was trying to learn how to preach. He knew how to preach, but he had to figure out, what are these American people like? And so he went down into a mine, a coal mine in Butler, Pennsylvania. And in the coal mine was a priest, and he said, if you don't worship Jesus, you'll go to hell. And that's what's nice about Krishna consciousness too. We don't have some patriarchal God that's going to vindictively burn us up for every little indiscretion. It's Radha and Krishna, it's love, it's Gaur-Nitai, the holy name. It has a different flavor, it has a family flavor, singing, dancing. At a gathering, they were talking Tattvamasmi, and they're arguing, and Prabhupada said, they're arguing and we'll reach God by eating. And he popped a sweet ball into his mouth. So then he's down in Butler, Pennsylvania. If you don't worship Jesus, you'll go to hell. So the miners were very simple people. And they said, Father, what is this hell like? And he said, well, it's very deep into the ground, and it's hot, and it's constricted, and I can tell you're intelligent. So this is our everyday working condition, so we don't, what is that hell? So then the priest said, there's no newspapers in hell, because it was their form of entertainment. So Prabhupada remarked that. So then he left for New York, and even though his typewriter was stolen, he met some people. He met Mukunda. And this story comes to mind. A mystic sadhu showed up. Not in New York, this is way later. Just the stories come in and the chronology may go. So first there was a mystic in Bombay at the time. There was a devotee of Sachi Sai Baba, and he said, my guru can manifest ashes, and he can manifest sand and ashes. So there was a magician there, and the magician said, this is a trick, it could be a trick. And they said, what do you think, Guru Das Ji? And I said, if Sachi Sai Baba manifested food to feed people, then I'd be impressed. What is the dust? some dust. What good is the dust? Mystic seed. But now, and I think I told this the other night, but now another mystic comes before Prabhupada and says, he manifested an apple. Well, that's better than dust. But it still couldn't feed thousands of people. So he was challenging Prabhupada and said, I manifested this apple, can you do that? And Prabhupada very simply and humbly and sweetly, so sweet, said, well, my guru asked me to bring this to the West. I went on a boat. I met a few young people. They liked me. I liked them. I gave them some knowledge. And then they opened many temples. And in those temples are many apples. Can you do that? The man says, I don't think they should bow down to you. And he's saying, as you were thinking they shouldn't bow down to me, they're thinking you should. This is democracy, majority rules. They're very clever. We're walking, there's some ducks early morning. Somebody was saying, the Swami's coming, get out of the way. I was thinking they were there first. It's their habitat. And sure enough, the Swami says, as you are thinking they are disturbing us, they are thinking we are disturbing them. So you could see he looked into the hearts of every living entity, even cats. So after New York, some people came, but then they suggested that San Francisco would be a good place for a temple. And so Mukunda came, and Ray Rama, Hayagriva's, a few people. Jamuna, who was my wife, also went to New York, and she was somewhat street smart, and she met the Swami, and he charmingly said, it's a custom in India that the sister cooks for her sister's wedding. But she wasn't sure about this man, especially when he taught her cooking, and she was a great cook. She touched herself and he said, go wash your hands. What? And then 99.99% of people who cook taste it. And he said, no, we don't taste when we cook for Krishna. What? And he said, go wash your hands. Then a little later she said, Swamiji, can I go smoke a cigarette? Go wash your hands. She thought it was the first mantra. Then, this part of the story isn't well known. Then, in his kindness, because she was cooking, he said, go down and go to the next room and lie down and take rest. Well, this is common in India and other places. But she still wasn't sure. What, this man's asking me to go in the room and lie down? But then the next day, she saw that he was really sincere and really kind and really caring. And so then she said, well, he really wasn't a dirty old man. Stranger than fiction. And then she saw that he was sincere. And then when she came back, she was raving about the Swami. And so then he was coming, and we were at the airport. And where was the Swami? Where's the Swami? Everybody's off the airplane. Well, if you do a lot of traveling, that's the way I do it. Everybody stands up and waits. So you let people go. And then he came out and he was golden and he was looking into regally, and he was looking like into Vaikuntha or something. And he sat down amongst us like a swan, and he took out some kartals, and with his lotus fingers, he started playing in the airport, and many people were coming around, and about 40 of us went to the airport. And the cars were painted. This was in the 60s. People painted their cars, and they wore costumes for whatever their inclination was. So there were American Indians and African Dashikis and Mexicans, and Mukunda had a Merlin the Magician, and Samarashinda had an Afghani shepherd's robe that smelled like sheep, and I had a samurai robe that Jamuna made. And he was chanting so sweetly. And then the suits came, the people from the administrators, the airport, because it was starting to obstruct. And as they came, somehow or other, he knew and he stopped. And so they had nothing to do. And he did this a lot. I remember in Calcutta, at this Pondo, we did put it on. And at the time there were Naxalites, and the Naxalites are communists. So I was called in, and we were still building the stage and everything the day of the Pondo. And so Prabhupada said, well, if there's life members or people who don't want to sit on the ground, make some seats and charge 1 rupee. So now the communists had something to complain about, class consciousness, rupee seats, and well, there was Colonel Datta. He was in the army, he said, and he wanted to fight them all. And I said, no. I go to Prabhupada and he says, just tell them they can sit in the seats. Then they had nothing to complain about. But he sang the Brahma Samhita prayers, and they were so sweet that the communists and everybody were pacified. But then there was a little noise. Still, it was his sister, Ishima. She's the compassionate, like Radharani, the compassionate manifestation. She just looks like Prabhupada and a cow combined, and just very sweet. And so she had a following. So there was some noise. The communists were quiet, but then he says, Gurudas, what's that? He always asked, Gurudas, what's that? And I thought, why me always? And then, well, I was very friendly with Pishima, and sometimes in India, the people who were quieting people down were more noisy, like chup, 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 they're more noisy, but I did it nicely. And a man came over to her and said, my husband died. And the way she said, your husband's with Krishna, was so believable. But she knew. The man was pacified. Okay, Prabhupada, your sister's quiet now. I think she was wanting your attention. He said, I used to beat her up and I still shall. Of course, they play kites as kids. So now we're in San Francisco, and like I say, there's all these people wearing costumes, and we had a Cadillac, which is a very wealthy car, but sure enough, we put the Hare Krishna mantra on it, so it's the Krishna-lac. And then there was the Thormobile and the Batmobile and all the cars. And at first he was translating, but soon he sat in the temple with us at 7 in the morning and taught us chanting. Now, he was so humble, he didn't tell us to bow down. He didn't tell us you needed a vyasa-san, because actually later he told me, if I told you all the rules and regulations, you would go away. So he really had to spoon feed us. It was very pleasurable, free love, free everything. But why would these young folks join this old Swami? And he said, because I gave them something tangible, the Vedic culture. And he gave us himself. That was enough. There were no mridungas, no kartals, no tulsi beads, 3 Srimad Bhagavatams, and not that many. No elders to teach us, no movement. The Swamiji. He taught us how to cook. He taught us how to chant. He taught us accounting. I brought him the cover of some water. He said, where's the receipt? What's a receipt, Swamiji? I was a hippie, you know. So he was teaching. And he says, accounting means put it down immediately. It was one of his adages. He had these wonderful sayings. Art means full belly. We're in Nandagram, we're looking at art. And he says, art means full belly. And that means if you're starving or surviving, you're not interested in looking at art or spirituality. So he says, like Bhaktivedanta, feed the quarter. Feed the quarter. So he taught us cooking. We made an altar, but there were no deities. So he sat on the altar and he played a bongo drum. There was no mridanga, but the kirtans were long and beautiful. As he was going to speak, one night we heard on the wall, next door were a motorcycle gang called the Hells Angels. And the Diggers, an Irish group who were feeding people. But again, bang, bang, Guru Das. What is that? Well, I don't know, Swamiji. Go see. So I bang on the door and there's this huge guy with no teeth and a swastika etched into his teeth, in his cheek. I had my bead bag. He had a switchblade knife. Yeah, what do you want? Well, the Swamiji's about to speak, and we're wondering if you could not bang on the wall. So he said, it was your singing, man. It was your singing, and that's why we're banging on the wall. And there's an American saying, knock yourself out. Which I didn't tell him, but I thought, okay, knock yourself out. It means, you know, whatever you like, go do it. So knock yourself out. So he said, yeah, your Swami's the heaviest, which was that's a compliment. Later on, I told Ken Kesey that one of the translations of Guru is heavy. And he said, real heavy. Heavy. So they actually liked, because he's the only Swami that went to the poor neighborhoods. He's the only Swami who picked up the rebels, the miscreants, the activists. I was part of the civil rights movement before I became a devotee, working with Martin Luther King, getting beaten up and put in jail. And he was able to attract us with his sweetness. No other Swamis, they all went to rich people. And so he came amongst us, and he's sitting on the altar. And beautiful kirtans, violins, and kelp horns, and trumpets, and kettle drums. And even the Psalms in the Bible say, praise the Lord with every breath, with drum and timbrel and trumpet. And so we did. And the kirtans were wonderful. Then there was a Krishna in a store. And I would go every day and say, please, can we have Krishna? And they'd say no. But I still went every day. And then one day Krishna wasn't in the window anymore. And so they said, you can have Krishna for $35. So I went out and said, Chaitra Guru's intelligent. Chaitanya will tell you what to do a lot of times. He'll tell you what to do. Pay attention. They call it intuition, but he'll enter your heart and tell you what to do. So many times he said, Krishna will help you. When I was in charge of Krishna Balaram Temple in Vrindavan, well, Krishna will help you. So I go, Chaitra Guru enters me, and I go in the street, and I say, my father's in jail, my father's in jail, give me some money. My little blue boy's in jail, my son is in jail, give me some money. My best friend's in jail, give me some money, $35. Now Swamiji sometimes let me be his parent, and it was really nice. I'd pull his sweater down. He bandaged my foot. Very, very intimate. He was very kind to me. Took me everywhere. So now we had a deity. And so Kartamashi was now on the altar. There was a Native American totem pole to the right of the altar. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's totems, animals, owls, hawks, eagles. They mean something to the Native American. It's sort of their history in totem, and the Swami just allowed it. There was a picture of Lord Jesus in the temple. He allowed it. The artist thought the Panchatattva were women. Not only that, it was the 60s. I can't make this up, but they were topless women. So Prabhupada comes in and goes, calls them right there in the temple, and Haridas comes, and the Panchatattva comes off the altar, and the next day they were men. So this is what he's putting up with, a bunch of barbarians that has to really tell us what to do. Don't touch when you eat, all of this. So then he told us about Vyasa-san. Well, there's a place for him to sit. And also soon Lord Jagannath can, I'll tell you that. Should I tell the Vyasa-san story? Yes. So Govinda Dasi's father was from Texas, and Texas was the biggest state before Alaska, so they thought they were better than everybody else. And so we had an idea that he didn't demand respect, but he earned it. And we had this idea that he was transcendental and smarter than everyone and sweeter than he was just so nice. We were his boys and girls' children. Again, there was no movement. But we respected him. But Govinda Dasi's father didn't. And he goes right up to the Vyasa-san. Well, the Patel clan from Gujarat were also coming to the temple. And so they go up to the Vyasasana too to hear wisdom. And Govinda Dasi's father said, "Why does my daughter have to have an Indian name?" He said, because he just combined all Indians, East Indian, West Indian. And there was this time when General Custer surrounded the Indians and massacred them, so he was looking like this at the Patels. Not only that, which made it even more ironical, Krishna's magic trick, so much fun, adventure. There was a light bouncing off the head of the Patels who had a gold tooth, and it went into the eye of Govinda Dasi's father. So it was like a strobe light, and it didn't help the situation. And he's looking around. Why does my daughter have to have an Indian name? And he's looking around. Prabhupada says, "You do not like Indians?" You do not? Yeah, I like Indians, all right. But why does my daughter have to have an Indian name? If your daughter's happy, why do you object? Because parents want their children. He disarmed him. So then, we thought things from India were very special, and Malati in an Indian store saw this little statue and she thought it's from India. And Malati was the one who could get things, and she actually took the statue. In America, it's called the 5-finger discount. 5-finger discount. So she brings it, and we were very close to the Swami. We asked him, like I asked him, can we wear Lord Nrsimha masks, heads on Harinam? I did. I don't know why I did. And he said, yes. And then he told the Charles Chaplin story that Charles Chaplin was at the ball dance and somebody ripped his tailing coats up, and he went into the private room and ripped his tailing coats all the way up, and then he went into the ball dance, and everybody saw this, so they followed him. They all ripped their tailing coats. So what great men do, others will follow. It says in the Gita. So that Prabhupada quoted that. So he said, yes, you can wear Lord Nrsimha masks on heads on Harinam. We never did, but but I asked, because we were like, oh yeah, everything. So she said, Swamiji, is this from India? And suddenly he bows down. He said, you brought Krishna here. And he told the story of Lord Jagannath. He says, are there any more? She says, yeah, I think there was a white one, a yellow one. Go get them. It's 10-finger discount. Samarshanda, can you carve these? Yes. Well, New York wanted Swamiji back, so I said, carve really slow. They wanted the Swamiji back slowly. Later on in London, at Bury Place, Samarshanda says, Prabhupada, is this hammering bothering you? Because his room was right above the temple. Is this hammering bothering you? He said, no, when I hear you hammering, I know you're working. They asked Pope John the 23rd, how many people are working in the Vatican? He said, about half of them. So it was that kind of wit. So now the altar has Lord Jagannath on it, and he's sitting in Vyasasana. So one day, he was actually above the temple, and before Malati got these, she stole some butter, a whole big thing from a truck. She saw the man go into the store, and like this, she puts it down. This is before Lord Jagannath. She didn't learn the lesson. Because we only had one sari and one dhoti in the whole movement. So the Swamiji wants to see you, so she puts the sari in. She goes in, so you have stolen the butter? You should not steal other people's properties. You should treat it like stool. It's other people's property. It's Krishna's property. You should not steal. But if you have to steal, then steal butter, because Krishna's calling you. See how he always forgave us? He forgave us. So now, one day he said it's Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, and at that time we were chanting japa and kirtan, but just in the temple. And so he says, stay in the temple all day till 6 o'clock and fast, and chant japa, chant kirtan, and he gave us a manuscript of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So, we did this. We read, we chanted. There was a great devotee called Jayananda Thakur. Have you heard of him? Well, he was really a great devotee. He was the example for everybody. He worked so hard. Everybody knew him in the market. Hi, Jim, you want some crude? He was wonderful. So he looks over, and another devotee, Jayananda, he'd look over to me, and they go like this with their heads. Let's get out of the temple. So I said, well, 2 Anandas trump 1 Das. So I said, okay, I'll go with you. But the Swamiji told us to stay in the temple, so we may get in trouble. We go to where the Prabhupada was, and he's on the 2nd floor, and we're chanting, and he goes like this. And I said, I told you guys that we're going to get in trouble. He told us to. He never chastised us, but we didn't want that experiment. Later on he did, but at that time, no. So, I told you. So then we're going back to the temple, crestfallen, and Upendra comes running out and says, the Swamiji wants to see you. And like at school, if you're bad, you go to the principal's office, or this is the principal of principals. I told you, Anandas, We get in the room, and Prabhupada is smiling with his oceanic smile. Lord Chaitanya has given you the intelligence, Chaitya Guru, to chant outside the temple. So now do this, and it's called Harinam Sankirtan. So do this every day. So that was the origin of the Harinam Sankirtan. Just to show you, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the start of the Rath Yatra, too. He gave us that. Now I'll show you how Chaitya Guru works. On the way to India, in Cairo, Egypt, we were in a 2-propeller plane. The cockpit only had a blanket, no door. There are people with goats and hens and children throwing up in the aisle, Maya everywhere. Giri Raj wouldn't look anywhere. Maya, I said, Maya is look at that child and this person carrying the goat. And so we get to Egypt, and the whole airport is there's big posters of President Nasser, their leader. And the whole airport was black with bunting. because he had been assassinated the day before. So everybody was beating their breasts and everything was in disarray. I had to make sure that I was in charge of 17. I was in charge of the party. Prabhupada wrote a telegram, Gaudiya, American in charge. So I went to make sure the bag and baggage was transferred. And so Giri Raj and Jamuna, Dinanath, the rest of the devotees, instead of going into the airport, they start jumping up and down and chanting near the airplanes. And so Prabhupada told us to bring the things to India. I had a new movie camera, Super 8. And so I'm saying, oh, look at the airport. There's President Nasser's posters all over. There's black. People are beating their chests. There's devotees chanting up and down. And there's some soldiers running at the devotees. And then the phone goes, boop, 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 boop. And Chaitanya Guru enters me, and I get between the soldiers, and I say, we're singing the praises of President Nasser. And then the soldiers put their rifles and knives up, and they became our guard. Chant as long as you want. So this is how Chaitanya Guru works in tradition. So we're very happy with the Swamiji. He's teaching us. But then he got sick. He had a stroke on the boat, and most people would have gone back to Vrindavan. Instead, he went to the place where the schedules of the boats were to get it out of the system. He didn't go back. Like acupuncture, a thorn takes out a thorn. The man saw him with the pointed Bengali shoes, go, well, Swamiji, you're looking at this schedule, but when are you going to go? And he says, I'm not going to go. It's just like when they asked Gandhi to cure somebody of eating sweets, and Gandhi said, well, come back tomorrow. And they said, why tomorrow? Because he said, I had to cure myself first. So it's that idea. So we prayed, and he went back to India, and he was sitting up there in the temple, and he said, I might die at any moment, and we were devastated. But it's true, it might happen. And he already had a stroke, and he told me later that when you're successful, Maya attacks sometimes. This is the dynamic. When you're successful, Maya attacks. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati said, when there's difficulty, it's not to cause you pain, it's to show you the misery of the material world, so then you can embrace the spiritual world. That's the dynamic, not to make you suffer. And in India, people do that. Just like when the mother chastises the child, what does the child do? Hugs the knees and the legs of the mother, the same chastising agent. They hung that. So that's the dynamic. Maya attacks, but we hug Krishna. So we weren't sure if we'd ever see the Swami, and said, I might die at any moment. At that point, one of the devotees, Rabindranath Swarup, said, I want to reach God directly. I don't want anybody in between, no man. Because in Catholic priests, you go on Sunday, and that's all. And people didn't think that necessarily a man would help. And this, I want to reach God directly. So Prabhupada just says, come here, my boy. And he crawled on all fours. And this was our family, based on love and trust. We didn't like to see one of our brothers in pain, and so we're all there. It's like we were in a theater. And then he crawls up, and on the stage, and he crawls up to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada puts his head in his lap and says, dear, dear, my boy, I just want you to be happy. And then he bounded out of the temple, stage left, exit. One of our first people who left, and we were sad. Eventually the dog and cat left. But they had places to go, because we couldn't take them to India, to London. So then we heard Swamiji got better in Vrindavan, and he came back and he said, my Guru Maharaj wanted something to happen in London, in England, so I'd like you to go. And he sent the top sannyasis. Not much happened. So he sent 3 married couples and a baby. Yeah, he had faith in us that we could do it. And so our idea was, if we're going to go to England, we should meet the Beatles. And this means you have a belief system already, because why would you even think of such a grandiose vision if you were just yourself? I met many famous people, but this was a grand idea. So we go to Montreal, and we had $1,000, and Swamiji took $50 like a magician out of someplace. So we had $1,050. I don't know where it came from. And so England can be very stroppy and politically correct, even back then. And we knew that we didn't have any return ticket, and there's 7 of us and $1,050. So we went to Amsterdam, and first Samashunda, Malati, and little Saraswati baby. We have $1,050. Okay, come in. Then they sent it back to me and Jamuna in Amsterdam. We have $1,040. Okay, come in. The bank took the cut. Okay, then Namakund and Janaki. So now we're in England, and we were living in the suburb, Herne Hill. And there was an Indian doctor colleague, and we started to invite some people. But we thought we should be in the middle of London, and we had one other name, Tom Drieberg, MP, Member of Parliament, a friend of Allen Ginsberg, the poet. And we couldn't get to see him. We wanted to see him. We went to the House of Commons, but his secretary thought he was a demigod and didn't let us see him. So we heard he was in the hospital for an eye exam. And we were very bold and adventurous. So we go to the hospital because we thought if he's having an eye exam, we'll bring some tapes and everything. And I don't know if you've heard the Govindam, Adipurusham, how Jamuna has this voice. So we go, the 7 of us, and she goes, "Oh, Mr. Drieberg, we've been wanting to meet you." Suddenly the man starts shaking. And the line's going like this, and it's become flat. The nurses and doctors are coming in, reviving. We hear from across the room, "I'm Mr. Drieberg." It wasn't, so the 7 of us go, boop, 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 like a cartoon. Boop, 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 boop. "Oh, Mr. Drieberg, we've been wanting to meet you." So he gave him tapes. He actually became a friend. Later on, when we finally got a temple, I was standing in a line at the Charter Bank. We thought we should have the Charter Bank and the Prime Minister's solicitor, Lord Goodman. This would help us to register the society. warehouse of an underground newspaper, and we were looking for a temple. I was standing in the line of a bank, and somebody says, "Do you know Shamsundar?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "He's actually here." "Well, I knew him from San Francisco." And then he had this place, a Bible dispensary, Berry Place. But first we were in the warehouse. The underground newspaper people said, there's a very wealthy man who's got a rare book company, and he owns this building, and go talk to him. He may give this to you as a temple. So we go to Portsmouth Square. It's a 360-degree penthouse, and Mukunda and Samashunda said, "Gurudas, you do the talking." And they said that a lot of times. So, in fact, Radhanath Swami said, Samashunda could build anything. Gurudas can't build anything, but he sure can talk. So the man gave us this warehouse, and there was no hot water, no heat. And actually, Malati lived in a box in the ground floor, and we made little windows. Malati and Saraswati. So this was rough conditions, but we had a temple, and that's actually George Harrison went there. When we met him, it was nice, but on the top floor was the branch of the black Muslims, Malcolm X. So this was Michael X. And I had been in the civil rights movement, so I heard Malcolm X talk, and he was very powerful, almost as powerful as Prabhupada. I mean, he had such a case about the injustice that was done. And after he talked, I wanted to beat myself up because it was easy. So he was very powerful, and this is the branch, Michael X. So we were starting a temple, and it would have been incompatible. So we go upstairs, and Samashinda and Mukunda say, "Gurudas, you do the talking." Now, in his book, he said that we all went. And it's not true. It was just me. And I just said, hey brother, we're going to have a temple here. Can I help you find a crib someplace else? Crib means house. I actually got him out of jail later because they planted some contraband, and he said, "You're a photographer," and I photographed his house, and there are babies and cats and dogs and everything. And we proved in court that they couldn't have found this contraband in like 1 minute, like they said. They planted it. So he became my friend, but he moved. So now we had the whole temple. And that was very nice. But now we needed another temple. So this man says, "Well, do you know Samshunda?" And I said, yes. So now suddenly we're 35 from 7. We're so attractive. We were chanting at this place called the Arts Laboratory on Drury Lane. People were coming, all the young people, the artists, everything. And so they were coming, and we were chanting, and people were liking us. So suddenly there's 35 devotees, and we had no room in the warehouse. So George says to John Lennon, "Let them live at your estate." So we all moved out there. So while we were doing that, Samashinda and Tirthapada were building the temple. Now, we still didn't get to meet the Beatles. We tried. We had an apple we found that walked, and it had the Maha Mantra on it. We gave it to Apple offices. Jamuna did a cover for the International Times, Sanskrit Hare Krishna. Gave it to him. I did a 2-part series of Prahlad story with text and art. Gave it to them, but this Peter Asher threw it all in the rubbish bin. So we brought an apple pie to Apple offices with the Maha Mantra on it. It was steaming hot, aromatic. His secretary from America, there's a proverb, as American as apple pie. We all wanted to eat it, but we all were yogis. She said, I'll get it to George Harrison. Meanwhile, the same Hells Angels, the motorcycle gang, and the roommate of Sam Rashinda was the manager of a Grateful Dead rock group, and the other manager, and Ken Kesey, the author, my friend, comes, and they're coming to San Francisco. Two Hells Angels girls, knives and guns and brass knuckles in their pocketbook. Two motorcycles, 500 pounds each, and the two managers and some Buddhist guy. And so they come. And even Hells Angels get jet lag. And you make them take their boots off. So they come to our warehouse temple, and we fed them sumptuously. And then we just got a movie, a cinema from Boston of Prabhupada walking. And they're full, they're prasadam. And we thought, oh, what a nice movie. It's just like Guru Maharaj walking. He's sort of looking towards the camera. What a great movie. To the Hells Angels, it's an old man walking up and down and fall asleep. We could have taken their weapons like the Pandavas could, you know. So then, they were invited to go to the Beatles. And so Sam Rashinda said to his rock Scully, his friend, he roomed with him in college, can I go? Okay. So now the room's like this, full. But the Hells Angels wanted to beat up the Beatles because that's what their dharma was. They beat up people. And so the room's full, and John Lennon, he's very street smart. He looks in, he feels the energy. I'm not going there. Sir Paul McCartney, and Ringo just follows along. He was really sweet. He says, Gurudas, can I come back as a cat? And I said, why? He says, I like cats. So he was very simple. He goes, but George looks in and sees Sam Rashinda, and he goes across the room and says, I've been wanting to meet you. And Sam Rashinda says, I've been wanting to meet you. And it was so peaceful that the Hells Angels didn't want to beat anybody up anymore. And so George says, I've got your album of your Swamiji, and John and I chanted for 3 days without stopping. We couldn't stop. We were in the car. So this was great. So then we invited him to our temple. And he came, and he was so respectful, and he loved prasadam. And we walked 7 steps together. Chanaka Pandit says, if you walk 7 steps together, you're friends for life. And he said, this is lovely, as we're washing hands. So then he says, please come to my house and chant. So we went out there. We had a little red pickup truck. Sam Rashinda was smart. He rented a truck. It had a crank. One day, you'll see Sam Rashinda's book. It's coming. One day, it wouldn't start, so they said, Gurudas, you do the crank. So I did, and my dhoti got caught in the crank. That's nothing, because after we met the Beatles, there was because actually the 3 of us and Jamuna actually dealt with the Beatles, because devotees can be very over-enthusiastic. And to prove this, George is coming along and one devotee bows down in a puddle of water, okay. But that's nothing, because they were, at Apple Records, they were rehearsing one day, the Beatles, and one devotee crawls up on the roof to look at them, and he falls through the skylight. His dhoti gets caught on the shard of glass. He ends up, not hurt, at John Lennon's feet in Brahmin underwear, 2 strips of cloth. And John says, hey, one of yours, eh, George? One of yours, eh, George? So we had a wonderful kirtan, and Billy Preston was there, the gospel singer. Later he gave a chord to George for My Sweet Lord. But there was a contention, a court contention that he stole it. He didn't. George later, they didn't let him have too many songs on their albums because John and Paul were very good. But George was starting to do Here Comes the Sun and Within You, Without You with the sitar. So they had to realize, well, he's valid as a composer and musician himself. But then, because he liked it so much, his wife became disenchanted. No pun intended. Or maybe pun intended. Because he was spending more time with us. So, she left with Eric Clapton eventually. So George says, I want to stop making nonsense songs. Like Bebop Lula, She's My Baby. He actually said that. So he's starting to write songs. Hear Me, Lord, My Sweet Lord. Isn't it a pity? Compassionate songs, beautiful songs. So one day he plays a song for me. Something in the way she moves treats me like no other lover. And he's singing it to me. And then he says, actually, I wanted to write it for Krishna, but if I said something in the way he moves, I'd be misunderstood. So that was so much fun. John comes in, and John and Yoko say, Gurudas, we want to let our hair grow for peace. So I said, John, peace, this came to Guru again. John, peace takes sacrifice. If you really want to show them that you want peace, cut your hair off like me. And the next week I saw they had crew cuts all the way. They didn't shave completely. So John and Yoko also were becoming interested. They were respecting us. Prabhupada came to England. I've come to teach you what you've forgotten, love of God. And then he lived in the John Lennon's estate. We had a big temple. And so England became very successful. Our two recordings, the single was the fastest selling single of Apple Records, Hare Krishna Mantra. It was in the top 10, which is very unusual for a new song. And we had no groupies or anything. It was unusual when we went to different events. Well, now the brahmacharis can't come because it's a nightclub. We had to do all that kind of thing. We toured all over Europe. We were very successful. Then we did the Rath Yatra here. Simishinda, very grandiose, we built things too heavy. The car was too high for the wires. We had to bring their lordships by Pelican to Trafalgar Square. The next year, the car collapsed. We pulled it from Balam. Mukunda, myself, and Ramatanu, from Balam to Marble Arch. I went there in car and I said, did we really do that? And there was steam, it was cold, and he's pulling it with the red pickup truck. We went everywhere. We crashed a party at this Mr. Dewan, the ambassador to India. Ravi Shankar was there. They announced us, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We were in the little red truck. So we pulled it all the way to Marble Arch, and it collapses. It's too big. After we pulled it for the whole morning. So I wrote a letter to Prabhupada and I said, it is due to my poor devotion that the car collapsed. And he was very formal. I have 119 letters. And every one of them except this one. He said, I've noted the contents of your letter dated such and such. And then he signed it, your ever well wisher. So now he says, I have noted your undated, unsigned letter. And it is not due to poor devotion, your poor devotion, it's due to poor engineering. Then the next year we got it right. So that's how we came to England, and then that became successful. Bury Place became nice, but then George gave us this big manor. The Scottish lady who sold it took everything out of it. The lamps, the toilet paper, everything. So there was sawdust. So at the Abhishek inauguration, there's sawdust, and there's ski lamps, and incense, and so there's a fire starts. So the fire brigade comes and puts it out. So then they're leaving, but they just thought, we'll look in the window, and then they see the devotees starting the fire again. So sometimes we're misunderstood, but George Bernard Shaw said, to be great is to be misunderstood, because we're doing great things. So then he sent us to Vrindavan, sent me to Vrindavan. So I'm going to stop here, but if there's any questions or comments.
Now the marble altar in Bury Place. Mukunda said the Rolling Stones donated the marble.
I think George did the marble, but the Rolling Stones did the T-bar.
What's a T-bar?
It's a big thing that holds up the ceiling.
Oh.
Oh yeah, and I've got another great story. 2 stories. Okay. We were just giving things to George and John, just giving. So Prabhupada says, I want you to, Krishna wrote this book on my shoulder, I want you to ask George to publish this, 19,000 pounds. And Siegel said, we've just been giving things to George and John and Paul, and other people are taking from them. Even John said, people are taking things from me, Gurdas. And I said, your real friends will give to you. And he said, like you. Anyway, so we're just giving. And so Prabhupada said, make me the bad guy. So they go to David Wynn, the sculptor Lord's house, saying, Mashunda, the bad timing, I can't do this. We're just giving to George. He's my friend. So finally at dessert, Srila says, well, Prabhupada wants, he's got this Krishna book, and he wants you to publish it. And George's face changed. You're just like everybody else. I thought you were my friends, that kind of thing. He didn't say it, but he was really. And then, lightning comes, and shakes the house, and the lights go out. And he had a generator, and the lights go on. And then he says, Krishna, must you be so theatrical? And then went up to it. And then one time in Mayapur, Prabhupada's word, he says, the farmers are saying, give me water, and Prabhupada went like that, and then water comes out of the sky. Shh! Another miracle. A butterfly went on his finger, another miracle. Deviation from the norm, miracles every day. So now I'm going to tell one more story, because this Tom Dreberg, who turned out to be a double agent for the CID and the KGB, stranger than fiction. But he was also a poet, and he was on our side. And he wrote a letter on House of Commons. It's soundproof. So now it's not soundproof. We knew it. Now all the officials come. The neighbor who was complaining had the fencing champion as a solicitor. We had Lord Goodman, Prime Minister. Now all the officials came. We had no chairs. We had to borrow them from the Theosophical Society. Now they can sit down. So now they're deeming whether we can zone this for a temple. And the neighbor was saying, that the noise comes through the wall, and his wife faints, and his dog jumps up and down and goes yip yip yip. Can I have a pair of cartels? Thank you. So there was a big window in the door, redwood door. And so they were all in the hallway, the solicitors and the people. And so because Krishna said to Maharaj Yudhisthira, who never lied, his chariot didn't touch the ground, say Aswatthama the elephant is dead, because there was a child Aswatthama and an elephant. And Krishna, I mean so many times with Abhimanyu, and he's shape-shifting and he's tricking all the time. So we thought if Krishna can do this, we could. So Aswatthama the elephant, and he blows the conch shell, they're all full. So we thought, okay, if Krishna can do this, we've got to use our ingenuity and be very bold. So now the door's open, and we had a rousing kirtan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Door closes. Mridanga, he played it really nice. So this is a Mridanga. Door closes. Door open. Door closes. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Boom, boom, boom. Door closes. They say, we can't even hear it in the hall. How can you say it's going to the wall and your wife is fainting and your dog goes here too? And they gave us the temple. Any other questions? Or?
How long have you been practicing Krishna consciousness?
50 years. Thank you.
That's my question.
And I'll tell you why. Prabhupada stops and he says, how do you know Krishna's God? So I said, you told us. He says, they will just say I'm old man. Somebody said Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita says so. He says, you know Krishna's God by the ecstasy you feel. And then he did an English proverb, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. So that's why, 50 years, I felt some ecstasy. First there's the foundation stage, Vaidya Bhakti, and then Raganuga, and then it becomes spontaneous. When he told me that, it became an adventure. The rules and regulations become part of you, and then the spontaneous, adventurous magic. And that's what keeps me going for 50 years. But also his wit, and time, place, and circumstance is a thing that helps us to understand things, because in a hot country you take a coat off, in a cold country you put it on. So then a year later, he stops, and we're on a walk, and everybody tried to get close to him. They actually passively aggressive would elbow out their godbrothers. I didn't have to, because he gave me so much association. And if I wanted to be close to him, I would just take the tape recorder. Oh, Gurdas has the tape recorder. Okay. So he stops and says, how do you know Krishna's God? Somebody says, oh, you told us. Nobody knows. I step up like a little puppy and say, oh, you know Krishna's God by the ecstasy you feel. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. And he says, no, Bhagavad Gita says so. Time, place, circumstance. So I hope I've brought you some of the beauty of Prabhupada, not just the awe and awesome aspect, the instructive. When I do this, you can see why I fell in love with him and still love him. And this gives you a flavor of the real Swamiji as much as the instructive one. And so That's my mission. Yes, please.
I've got two questions. One is, how old are you when you met him, and how old are you now?
I was 22 or something. I was a little bit older. As I say, I was in the civil rights
So you are
movement.
70 now, 71.
75. 75. Yes.
Question. Did, like many Vaishnava gurus, did Prabhupada predict his own death?
I don't know. Good question.
Because there were indications you were saying that, he didn't have too long to go, but it was like riddles. He didn't really spell it out.
Yeah, I really don't know. I was in Lebanon. I could have gone there, but I was on a mission. You had a question?
Out of these 50 years, what would be the most valuable thing for you now?
For
And what
you,
would be the worst one?
for you to become Krishna conscious is the most valuable thing. And for you to not be Krishna conscious would be the worst thing. But with Krishna or not with him, it's simple.
Thank you.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
That's on my mind. If you pass away
Yes.
and you're on your mission for Krishna consciousness
Yeah.
and you happen to pass,
Yeah.
what happens? Do you come back do you come back again for your purpose?
It really depends on your enlightenment. If Krishna wants you with him, you'll go with him. But if there's something to do here, you come here.
Come back.
But when we think of him, he's with us. So it's an eternal equation. And part of the thing is the separation, and Pralamba, and the connection. So I feel he's with me. Sometimes I do WWPD. What would Prabhupada do? and you know, I have so many categories, so he tells me. Yeah.
One question. It's from the Kurukshetra battle. In the Mahabharata, Krishna came to the assistance of Mother Draupadi. But why didn't he come to the assistance of Abhimanyu, who was 16 years old and surrounded by the world's most awesome warriors? And Krishna was there. Why didn't he intervene?
Again, I don't know. Yes, Krishna.
It's WWPD.
Yes.
What did you mean with WWPD?
What would Prabhupada do? What would Prabhupada do in his... Because he gave us the Vedic culture. So, okay.
Thanks for your wonderful presentation. I just want to mention that previously I was a bus driver, then I became ill. I was driving the 139 bus that goes to West Hempstead, and I drove past Abbey Road Studios about 3 or 4 times every day. And every time I would go by there, it would remind me of Prabhupada and his relationship with the Beatles. And every day, without fail, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of tourists out there
Yeah,
photographing that Pelican crossing on Abbey Road. You know?
right.
And I'm thinking to myself, it's become for them like a tirtha,
Yeah,
like almost like a holy place of pilgrimage.
Sure.
You know? They're out there every day, and they pose like, remember the Beatles
Yeah.
walk across? People come and they walk like that, they pose like that, they take each other's pictures.
well, we also post like that. Radhanath, Jamuna, who was it? Radhanath, myself, and Siegel. So we did that too. Because it is a gift. Yes.
Prabhu, was you ever present when Srila Prabhupada would be with Narayan Maharaj when they were together.
No.
Their love was so intense.
Yeah.
Real.
One day in Vrindavan, Prabhupada went there and he was really excited about their meeting. I met Narayan Maharaj in Badger, and he told me how much Prabhupada appreciated my service in the Krishna Balaram temple. He was very nice. I met him there one time, got darshan. I know he always loved Prabhupada and honored him and vice versa. They were very close. And we're very close. All these foolish artificial lines of separation are unnecessary. How many people are even offering prasadam or singing to Krishna? If there's any difference, it's to celebrate the differences. If everybody was the same in the world, how boring. If we look at the different bead bags, everyone has different colored bead bags. Prabhupada said, be independent. He was washing his cloth. And he also said, be individual. Because this is a Chinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, we have unique, special relationships with Krishna. So we celebrate the difference. That's what makes it good. And be yourself, everyone else is taken.
In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says better to follow one's own path, even imperfectly, rather than follow somebody else's path, even if you don't do it perfectly.
Yes.
Did you hear Prabhupada say anything about that particular verse?
Well, he was basically saying, even I can't do it for you. I can inspire you, I can instruct you, but it's your path with Krishna. So it is. It's our relationship.
Srila Prabhupada ever say why he went to kind of the poor neighborhoods, not the rich family like you said, and the other gurus? Did he even talk about why he chose you? And
I think Krishna just guided that. And in San Francisco, they said, well, I did a radio program for him. And so the first, again, we're clever and bold. So it's a call-in show. So the first question, one of the devotees said, Swamiji, who am I? He says, and he speaks for 20 minutes. The next one, why are we here? So the announcer says, well, we're going to get a different point of view. So this lady calls and says, why is your so-called temple in the Haight-Ashbury? So he says, so-called? And he says, we have deities, we have books. Okay, why is your temple in the Haight-Ashbury? He says, inexpensive rent. Why are you preaching to the hippies? He says, they're not hippies, they're happies. And then, how did you get here? Well, I had free passage on the Scindia shipping lines. So she says, Swamiji, are you a freeloader? Well, he had never heard the word, and he said, yes. And then I heard like when she fainted. Yes.
I wonder if you could, somebody sent me this the other day, and I wonder if you could comment on it.
Yeah, this is one of our publicity shots for the Apple records. We were the fastest selling single. So there's me in the corner and Samashunda with like an Asraj, and Janaki and Mukunda and Malati and Jamuna, and this is Kulashekar, one of the first devotees. Kulashekar Digvijay and Tirthapada joined us very early. So But this was a publicity for Apple Records. Thanks.
Do you know
Yes,
how Mukunda is doing now?
sorry?
Do you know how Mukunda is doing now?
His health isn't so good. Which reminds me, we're starting a thing called Vedic Care to take care of devotees all over the world. People who have given their lives for Krishna need to be taken care of. Sometimes they're isolated. We're having outreach teams to assist people in homes and hospitals. Do we have the brochures here? Yeah. This is Aradhana. She's the chief executive officer. She's dynamite. We're getting a lot of response. People are giving us places. People are volunteering. We just had a meeting today at the Manor. So now, even more than lip service, but in any way you want to become involved, you can volunteer. It's a very grand vision. We're going to have healing for the devotees and the public, outreach teams to assist people, and actually places for devotees to come. First residential village, then they get a little sicker, and farms, and then assisted living, and then if they choose hospice or hospital, we want to help them, and then the transition, the Shraddha with Tulsi, and the families, somebody's sick, they react, we'll assist them, because the families can't stay at the bed 24 hours, we've seen, and we have MP things with the bhajans and kirtan, and we have tapes, and we have virtual reality, and we'll sing katha in your ears and help out. And so this is a real important thing. We started it 2 years ago, but it's ongoing. Vrindavan gave us how many rooms?
8 to 10.
8 to 10 in an ambulance. So Radhadesh gave us a room in Belgium, and this is for hospice and assisted living, working out of the college. So it's going on. Please help, because I see a lot of white hairs here, and you never know, and it's really needed, and it's non-sectarian. So if you need care, that's what we're here for. Help
What would
us.
you do, sorry, if you're going to volunteer?
What?
If you're going to volunteer, what would you do?
What are your interests in life? What do you like to do?
Healing is good.
Healing? So you can, we have a multifaceted healing. I know healing, so if you want to volunteer, we might be getting a place in Glastonbury, but we'll be doing something in this area too. So we have a doctor who's volunteering free. We have some other healers. So we would love you to do that way. It's very rewarding. Please give us your information. I'll give you my card. Here's some cards. Yeah, just whoever wants. I guess the ticket to L Street. Anybody else wants? Yeah.
I'll get those flyers.
I was reading here rehabilitation and home care.
Yes.
I'm a support worker and work with elderly people too.
Yes.
So I don't know, I would be interested.
Please. So give your information to Radhana.
The easiest thing to do is that there is a volunteer on the website. You will see on the top. There is volunteer. You just click there, and then you fill in the little form. Very simple. And then I'll have all the information, and we respond right away. That's the best way.
So, what's the website for?
It's the. I'm gonna get more flyers. The vedicare.org. Vedicare.org. But if you Google by now the Vedic care,
What is this here, Sanskrit?
that is it is a sign that it's one of
I love you.
This picture got put on logo of B2G. How did
Right.
that happen?
Well, that was actually at Conway Hall in London, but because it's a great photo, they decided to use it. So he says, why are you photographing me so much? Because his expressions were so pure, each one. I said, because I love you. He says, there's a superstition in India that if you photograph someone, it'll shorten your life. He says, what do you think of that, Gurudasji? So I said, Swamiji, it's not how long we live, it's what we do with our life that's important. And then he looked, oh, my smart pupil. And then he said, it's just a superstition. He's teasing me. He teased me, and it was great. When you get teased, then you're really family. You know, then you know that it's really sweet if you're teased. So, I've got a long journey tomorrow. So if there's no more questions, I'll stop.
I'd just like to just warmly thank you so much for coming and blessing our little centre here and just making that connection for everyone with Srila Prabhupada. And yeah, please come again.
Sure. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.